So I've had a few of you ask how to do, or how to at least start the midterm. So I figured I'd do a quick run through so that we at least have an explanation of what's going on. So there were 18 steps. The first one is create a Windows 10 virtual machine. And then the second step is to load the VM, set up for NAT, set up for 100 gigs, and we're going to use 60 gigs for the beginning portion of it. So I'm going to run through setting up Windows 10 Pro, I will show you at least up until step 5. So in order to do this, we need two things. We need something to do a virtual machine, and we need Windows 10. So a lot of learners have reached out saying that they don't know where to do those two things. So I have a Windows machine, and I have nothing else set up. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to set up two tools. I'm going to set up VirtualBox. Alright, so I'm going to set up VirtualBox, downloads. I'm going to do a Windows host, and it will take a minute or two to download. That's one. Next is I need the Windows 10 ISO. It's Windows 10 download. This should take us to the Microsoft site, and you should find a creation media tool. We'll download that as well. So I will go ahead and open both of these so I can see them. So I have VirtualBox and I have Media Creation Tool. Media Creation Tool is going to download Windows 10 as an ISO. This is going to probably take the longest, so I'm going to run this first. It is going to look at the computer equipment. It's going to determine what form of Windows it should download, and then it will give you a few prompts. The big thing is you have to accept the terms and services, and you need to select download ISO, because you can also prep a USB flash drive from this as well, and we don't want to do that. We just want the ISO. And this does take a few minutes. Alright, so when it gets to the screen, do not do the upgrade. Click on the Create Installation Media. We want ISO. You can leave all these the default, which will be English, Windows 10, and the architecture is 64-bit. Don't do flash drive, do ISO. That's a data file we're going to use to create our virtual machine. I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to call it Windows 10. This can take anywhere between a few minutes to an hour or more, depending on your internet speed. So I'm going to pause while it downloads. So it will go download, and then it will go progress. The progress is just prepping the download. So again, just you have to be patient, let it finish its task, and once it's done, I will show you the screen. Alright, so once it hits about 80%, you should see the file populate on the desktop. Not quite done, you gotta wait for it to get to 100. Once it's done, it should give you a finish button. Click finish. It will delete all the temporary files it used, and then it will go away. That is step 1. Step 2 is install the hypervisor. If you don't do VirtualBox, you can do VMware Player. If you have a Mac, you could do the VMware Mac, or the VMware version of it called Fusion. You can download Mac versions. So again, the general steps here you can apply to any hypervisor. first step is install the hypervisor. And realistically, all the defaults should be fine. It does take a minute to install. Alright, so once it's done, let's go ahead and start our hypervisor. We're using VirtualBox again. If you do use a different hypervisor, the steps should be pretty identical, even though the screens may not match. Essentially, step 1, create a Windows 10 virtual machine, call it last name TAC-MID. So I want to go ahead and do a new virtual machine. I will call this. If you're using VMware, you may get half the screen and then the next slide will be the next screen. Again, it's going to look similar, maybe not identical. Choose Windows 10. Our instructions do not say memory requirements, so 248 should be enough. Create hard disk. Dynamic is fine. Alright, instructions say it needs to be 100 gigs. So, this is where a lot of people get stuck. We have our virtual machine, it's been created, but we need to install Windows on it. So, if you click on storage, you click on the CD-ROM. We need to select our ISO. So click on the disk, choose a disk file, that's ISO. I saved mine on the desktop. That will mount the virtual Windows disk. Click OK. So that's done. We are now doing step 2. It said make sure the network is set to NAT. Go to network. Make sure it says NAT. We want to only use 60 gigs of the main drive because we're going to use the other 40 gigs for this E drive on step 10. So we will go ahead and move on to step 2. So we will start our machine. The assumption here moving forward is you have these instructions in front of you, or the requirements. So I'm going to stop populating them. When you power on your machine, it should find your mounted Windows 10 ISO in the optical drive in your virtual machine. So it should start loading off of that drive. If it does, this will happen. If it doesn't, power off your machine, double check storage, double check your optical drive, and remount your Windows 10 ISO. From here, choose Next, Install Now. Alright, so step 3, we don't have a product key. Step 3 also says Windows 10 Pro. You have to accept the terms and services. It doesn't tell you which option to pick, but since we're doing a fresh install, it needs to be a custom. And it actually says specifically do not use the full 100 gigs. So click New, and we want to use 60 gigs. So instead of that, we can do 60,000. Let's see if that is. You may get prompted about additional partitions, that's fine. So here's my 60 gig partition. I did 60,000, so it's just under 60 gigs. That's fine. You need the unallocated space around 40 gigs because we're going to use that in a later portion on step 10. Click Next. It will start installing. This process can take a little longer. I will get you to the step 4/step 5 area, and then we will go ahead and call it, because from there you should be able to do the remaining 13 steps. A lot of people struggle with setting up a VM. That's the only reason why I did the first few steps. And again, this process can take a few minutes, can take longer. You have to be patient. I will pause while it goes through the process. Alright, so once it's done installing or getting the installation files, it will get the installed features, installing updates, and then it will finish up. Again, pretty much you have to sit back, relax while it goes through this process. You can't do anything but sit and wait. When it's done, it will auto restart, and it will load off of the installed media. It should no longer need the ISO. So don't boot off the DVD the second time. When it restarts, just let it run through its setup. Basically, the first time it loads off the DVD is to install Windows. The second restart, Windows is installed on the hard drive, but the configuration portion has to take place. So that's why we don't boot off the disk the second restart. It should start getting the device ready, it should start services, it should start the core portion of Windows that will allow us to do our configuration. And the getting ready portion can take a few minutes or longer. Now again, you have to be patient with this because this takes as long as it takes. You don't get a status update, you don't get a status bar, you get a spinny wheel saying getting ready, and that's it. Alright, so it may restart a third time. Again, just let it restart. Don't worry about loading up the optical drive. The third start normally is just it doing stuff in the background. First of all, you should notice that our spinny wheel has changed size. And it goes back to the old size. We wait, and when it's ready for our input, it will give us the option. You should start seeing the screen change, so like just a moment. This is where our user starts being able to interact with the device. This isn't the time frame that they can. Alright, so first screen is this let's get started. Choose the appropriate region. So we're kind of in between step 3 and step 4. Because step 3 was the boot the VM, install Windows 10. Step 4 is the more configuration settings that we haven't quite got to. Alright, so the second screen should be the keyboard. Go ahead and skip the second keyboard. You can skip the keyboard, you can skip Cortana, you can skip a lot of the more miscellaneous options. There is a lot of stuff that it's doing in the background, so again, you have to be patient. It's going to do the setup behind the scenes. We just be patient. Alright, so we have two options, set up for personal use or set up for an organization. Choose personal. Step 4 says you can do organization. You can do either or. Because you'll notice there is no going back. This is where you will do your step 5. Step 5 says create the administrator account. This is a live account. You need to do an offline account. And that is where you'll do your admin. A lot of people kept trying to do a live account, and you cannot create the live account. Microsoft will keep pushing the live account. Click on limited experience again. And you should now see the use live account or an online account. Ignore that. This is where you do admin, and you would take it from here. This is at step 5 of 18 for the midterm. So this should be sufficient enough to get you started. If you have any questions, reach out. Thank you.